right, I'm going to do I'm going to actually log back into that guy under mine, because I prefer Mizzou Gold over Badger Red. Bucky Red. Actually, I think my color might be Bucky Red. See if we can get back in there. So I'm going to do a quick demonstration on the inspection side, just kind of give you an idea of all the different things you could do when entering your inspection. I realize most of you will spend 90% of your time actually on this part of the application doing inspection entry, so we feel it's important to cover. So I'll try to go over as many things as possible, but if you have questions afterwards, when we get to the Q&A, absolutely throw them out there to me, and I'll be happy to answer them if I can. Again, Chip mentioned earlier, it's taking a little while to log on. We're on an acceptance box. This is a test system, and there are a lot of other applications on here right now, so at times it can be quite slow. It should be. It
takes 64 space, but this time it was 22 only.
So anyway, don't necessarily judge the speed of the system right now based on this. I think it's a lot quicker when you get onto the production site. So I'm going to go, I think we're going to pick on Dale Weber here a little bit. So we're going to go over to Brown County and enter an inspection over there. Again, so this is the structure screen that we were talking about earlier. Again, everything's on one screen. It's a lot easier to see all your data for a bridge just in one location here. The third button is the inspection button. I'm going to click on that. Now note when I click on that, I get 3 buttons. This is because I have permissions to enter inspections in Brown County. If I didn't have permissions to enter inspections, you'd get 1 button, and that'd be the history button. So I'll show that to you. So if you know you need permissions for a particular county, but you're only seeing history, contact Shiv or myself, and we'll get the proper form to you so that we can get your permission set up for that particular county. Clicking on the history button. So this is similar to the old inspection pre-select. There was a review button there that showed you all the previous inspections that were done. This is exactly the same thing. It's just called history here. I'll click on one. This is a routine inspection that was done in 2009. And down at the bottom, you'll see a button called View. So if you're wanting to look at that particular inspection, you click that View button after you've selected it, and it should open the old PDF from the core element inspection that you guys are used to. If this structure actually had any media attached to it, so if it had pictures that were uploaded or PDFs or things like that, there'd be an additional button here called Get Media. And what that button does is takes everything that you've uploaded into that inspection, zips it into one file, and either gives it to you on the screen where you can open it there, or it emails it to you. I think there's a choice or a preference that you can choose, whichever way you want to see that. So that's basically the history button. The frequency button, you had this on the old system too. This was the type tab on the inspection pre-select. This is where you can recommend a inspection to be performed on a bridge. Say for instance this one needs an underwater dive inspection. If I click that checkbox on the recommended column and hit save, it's going to put this bridge into the underwater dive inspection list, so you'll start to see it on scheduling reports and performance reports and things like that. I'm going to take that one back off just so Dale doesn't get mad at me. No, actually, we're on a test server, so none of this data that we're entering is actually hitting anything that's worth any value at this point. The other thing you can see in here is it gives you a history of the inspection. So routine inspections. HSI currently has 10 inspections that were performed from 97, which is basically when we started, 96, 97, when we started to do core inspections, up through October of 2014, or 2013, excuse me. And this is your standard frequency. So we got a 24-month frequency for routine inspections. You can see it's different down for dive is 60 and things of that nature. If you wanted to, as an inspector or program manager, shorten your frequency, you do that in the next column, which is the recommended frequency. So just as an example, I'm going to throw this one in for 3 months, and I'll show you the reason for that in a little bit. But basically, if the last inspection was done in October 2013 and I have a 3-month frequency, I'm late, and I'll show you why that matters in terms of the demonstration here. So that's 2 of the tabs. The third tab is the Create tab. So I'm going to click on that. Again, this is similar on the inspection pre-select that you guys know well. The Create tab there. Far right-hand side, the agency inspector. The system remembers that once you've entered it once. There's not much difference there. There's the date of the inspection. It's kind of an interactive thing now where you can slide back and forth. I'm just going to say March 5th for this one. That just to choose a random date there. We also have over on the left-hand side a cover photo. So you can enter a cover photo for your reports here. I'll show you how to do it. It's really quick. Basically, you just click this button that's called Choose File. When you do that, you'll get your browser. Definitely browse to the location where your picture that you want to use for your cover photo is. I'm going to use this one. And click Upload. And depending on how fast your Wi-Fi is, or if you're, whatever connection you've got, it'll load appropriately. We would ask that you guys try to limit your photos, to as small of a resolution as you can. We don't want people uploading, 10 meg photos. Several hundred kilobytes is probably sufficient for most of the things that we're looking at. So when you're working with your camera, you may want to look at that resolution and tone it down a little bit if you can. All right, so we've entered a cover photo for the report. Now we get to the boxes where the inspection and activity types are. You can see in inspections, you got your normal stuff: routine, initial, damage, fracture, critical. What we've done, though, is we've moved the inspections for UW Profile and Visual Probe over to something called an activity, and we can discuss that a little bit later. But what that basically is a Visual Probe inspection, at least in our new manual, it is still something that needs to be done, but it's not necessarily a standalone inspection type. That's an activity that you could do during a routine inspection or during the initial inspection, or even during a dive inspection, you could actually do some visual probes there as well. So we've kind of changed the terminology on that a little bit. Still the same thing. In all essence, there's not much difference in there. SI&A, again, you guys know that. You went through that process before. That's a checkbox. And load posting verification. We might get that a little bit later on as well. So one thing that I'm going to show you on the system here too is it's got a smart feature. It knows when certain inspection types or activities are due. And if you remember on the frequency tab, I put it in at 3 months. Okay, so this one in theory is due or late. It's likely late. HSI is smart enough to know that. So if you're out in the field entering inspections on a tablet or a laptop with an air card, and you see that, say you see that for SI&A, it might prompt you that, hey, the SI&A is due, I should go ahead and do that while I'm out here. So the system's trying to help you out a little bit and just kind of let you know what things it believes is due based on frequencies and things like that. Just another tool in the toolbox there for you. For this example, I'm just going to select routine right now, and I'm going to hit the create button. And you'll note that it takes a couple seconds here, but basically when it refreshes, I got some new information here. I've got a total time hour and a total time minutes. Those are the time on the inspection site itself. So I'm going to just throw in some, hour and 15 minutes. And team personnel, this is your old team members that are out on the site. I'll just throw in a couple of names there: Scott, David Ginson, Shiv. Whoever's out there actually helping you out on the inspection, you throw into that spot. You will note that when I hit create, the create button changed to edit. It's exactly the same as the old pre-select. Well, not exactly the same. The old pre-select said maintain, so a little bit different word, but same concept. So your inspection's open, and the only additional tab we got at this point was the late reason. So what that is that the HSI knows that you're late, so you have to fill out basically a reason for it. Not necessarily justification, that's a totally different thing, but we want to know why the inspection is late. So there's several options that you can select from in here. I'm going to just, for this purpose of this, choose the equipment. And I'm going to click add. And you really should put a note just kind of detailing why the inspection was late. If you have that, I'll say if I can type, the snooper truck was in the shop. We had to reschedule for March. All right, now you'll notice when I hit save now, I get the rest of the tabs. Okay, so the HSI is happy. It says, okay, go ahead and enter an inspection. We got this reason locked. So I'll go through some of these tabs briefly. But what I'll show you, you'll see the last tab currently listed as maintenance. I'm going to go back to the edit tab. Say I forgot that I actually did a couple of different activities here. So let's say I actually did an underwater visual probe. When I click that, you'll notice that a new tab appears. So the system's smart enough, as you click on or off different activities or inspection types, that it will give you the additional tabs with information that you're needing to fill out. So I'll go ahead and do SI&A. Just refresh that real quick, and you'll also see the SI&A tab. So fairly smart system in terms of giving you the tabs that you need to fill out information. All right, so let's go. Typically what I do in here is I go from left to right and just kind of go through each tab. I'm sure you could have any method that you prefer when you're actually entering the inspections on the system for yourself. The first one I'm going to go into is structure information. Basically what this is inventory information that's on your inspection form. So, you're seeing at the top the identification and location information. That's like feature on, feature under, lat long, for instance. So, as Shiv showed you earlier, if I go up to the map and take a look, we've got the lat longs are showing me that I'm on 172 and 41. Let's say that was incorrect, and I'm actually out in the field with my tablet or my phone. If I want to use my current location, I'd stand basically where you need to, where you want to take the shot, and I click use current location. And we'll see if it works because I'm actually sitting in a conference room right now, so I'm not sure. Looks like it has updated the location, and if I go back into map, you can see I'm at Hill Farms here now. So that's a little tool on the mobile side of things. Instead of typing in the address, if you're actually out in the field with your device, you could just use that current location. There's also, I think you guys have seen most of these before, there's approach roadway, bridge roadway, things of that nature that you typically look at when you're doing your inspection. Traffic information, capacity and rating, that's typically been on the old screen. You will note anything that can be edited is in white, and anything that cannot is in gray. I'm logged in, so I can edit quite a bit of stuff. When you go in here, you won't be able to edit the load rating information in particular, but most of these screens you will be able to edit. Let's say, for instance, on this one we had overburden that increased, so I'm going to increase the overburden to 4 inches. And since we went from a 2-inch file value of overburden to a 4-inch, I'm going to click re-rate for capacity because we've got additional weight. And then you really need to type in a note, as you guys have done many, many times in the past. Due to capacity, or due to overburden, excuse me. And on, you really should put in a little more detailed notes than what I'm going to do during the course of this. As you continue to scroll down, this particular bridge has expansion joints, and you can see the history. We have a south expansion joint and a north abutment expansion joint. And throughout the years, the inspectors have been taking both temperature readings and expansion joint opening readings. So we're going to go ahead and do that as well. I'll say the temperature when we were out there was 40 degrees, and for the south abutment, I had a 1.5-inch opening, and for the north abutment, I had a 1.3-inch opening. And then down at the bottom is clearance information. So for this particular bridge, we have a highway minimum vertical under non-cardinal clearance of 16.67 feet. If I wanted to change that, I'd come in, if I did measure that in the field, and I could put in my 16.5 or whatever the new clearance is. And when I'm done with that information, I'll just come down to the bottom and hit save. So that's basically the inventory information that you could take a look at on the system. The next two are probably the most critical components are the elements. So what I'm showing you right now is an ASHTO inspection going forward. The last inspection for this bridge, excuse me, was a core element inspection. So when you have a core element inspection as your previous one, you'll get a tab called Old Elements. And I'll click on that. Basically what that tab is a label to show you what the old core element system was and where the condition states were for your last inspection and what the notes were. That's important, particularly for your first round of ASHTO inspections, because what we had to do, that Rick actually talked about earlier, was a pretty intense data migration process to get to the new ASHTO elements, which are on the other tab. That process isn't 100% accurate in some instances. You're looking at language with 5 condition states for, say, a deck that are going to 4 condition states. So we had to make some judgment calls on how that gets translated. And I think we did a pretty good job overall, but again, it's the inspector's discretion when they're on the site to really ensure that they've got all the elements that they've needed, and that just don't assume that the condition states have transferred over. So you really want to check each condition state and make sure that you put in the proper value for the inspection that you're doing. So with that, I'll go over to that element tab. So I'll give you a brief breakdown of this one. We got quite a few elements in there. I picked the bigger bridge a little bit on purpose just so you could see the variations here. The way the screen's laid out, on the far left-hand side is the check boxes to indicate whether or not you actually, when you're out on your inspection, did you actually inspect that particular element or not. The default is everything, and since we're doing a routine inspection, it's fully anticipated that you look at all elements, so it's already checked that way for you. Just to the right of that is your element, your protective system, and your defect buttons, if you will. So I'm going to hover over the deck, and you'll see that you'll have several options when you're there. In particular, you have Add Defect. So obviously decks and other elements like that have defects. Protective systems, so if you had a overlay or something like that you would want to add, you use that button. Or the delete button. So if you're not, if this is the wrong element, for instance, instead of the 12, maybe we should have had 13, you have to delete this particular element. And actually I'll do that just to kind of give you an example. So I'm going to delete element 12. And the system basically asks you, are you sure you want to do that? And click OK, and you'll see when it refreshes, now we're on our second element, and we, at this point, do not have a deck element. So how do we add one? If you go to the bottom of the screen, there is a drop-down for main element. And you've got a toggle and a menu that you can go through to pick whichever elements you want to add. So I said in the example that we're going to add a pre-stressed concrete deck, so I'm going to select that and click Add. And when I do, and come back up to the top, you can see that element's been added. So if you remember in the old system, to add or delete elements, you had to click on an element number. It took you to another site. You had to do all this manipulation with the element list. Then you had to go back into your inspection. So we kind of removed that whole process, and you can do it all on one screen. So we've simplified that somewhat, just to kind of make it a little bit easier to navigate through here. All right, so we got our pre-stressed concrete deck. It's got a unit of measure of square feet, but you can see that our total quantity is 0. It has no idea how much square footage of this deck that we've got in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the total quantity. To do that currently, what we do, let's say this bridge has 2,000 square foot of deck and it's all in condition state 1. So I'm just going to go into state 1 and type in 2,000, and then when I click off of that, you'll see that the button that looked like this turns into a plus 2,000. And what that means is this button is asking you if you want to sum the quantities of condition state 1 through condition state 4 and add them to your total quantity. So if you're doing your inspection and you know what each of your individual quantities are, so if I put in 500, say, for condition state 2, you'll see 5,000, sorry, then it goes up to 7,000. So it's kind of a smart button to know exactly how much your quantity is. So I'm going to say, yeah, this is a 7,000 square foot deck. And I'll put that button, and you'll see that it puts that 7,000 in your total quantity. Once you've established your total quantities, you won't need to use this column of buttons again, unless you go out for an inventory inspection if you put on a new deck and the deck is widened, then obviously you've got a different deck element to put on there, a different quantity for that element and things like that. So that's just something to note. Another thing, so I'm in condition state 2, so we probably should have a defect for that. I'm going to hit this is a refresh button up at the upper right-hand corner of the screen. I'm going to hit that real quick. And when I refresh the screen, notice that the system is smart enough to give me a kind of a little warning message. And basically what it's saying is for element 13, I am missing a defect for all of condition state 2, which is correct. We've got a condition state 2 that doesn't have an associated defect. So I'm going to add one. So I'll hover over that element, and click Add Defect. Then we'll get a little drop-down box here, and it only displays the defects that are appropriate for the element that you're working with. So I'm just going to say this defect was all delamination, and click Add. All right, you will notice now we've got an element 13, and indented in with a little red cross that's supposed to signal that this is a defect is defect 1080, which is the defect. You'll notice that it doesn't have any values filled out. I'm going to say all 5,000 square foot are in condition state 2. And then as Paul and Todd taught you guys at the 2-day course, you need to put in notes for this stuff. So I'm not going to put in a serious note here, but CS2. And they also told you that for your notes you should date and initial who's done that. So I'll do that as well. So you can continue down the list. I mean, element 107 is your steel open girder. Has corrosion as a defect. We already had that defect in there. It also has painted steel as a protective system. Protective systems are a shield. Okay, so if you see a shield, that denotes that it's a protective system for the element that it's indented under, basically. You also notice that this particular structure had a quantity already assigned for the painted steel. What we've done is, using rating files that we have available, we have come up with an estimate of the square footage of paint for most of the local system, and unfortunately a little bit less of the state system, because we still have some of those rating files we're trying to pull together. But as we get this information, we'll continue to upload it. So for the most part, I think you will not have to do the calculation for the painted steel. The exception to that is when you open an inspection and it has a 999, that's a bogus default value because we didn't have a file that could calculate it, and then you would have to put in an estimated steel quantity for that, or excuse me, a paint quantity for that. And on down, I won't continue to go through the rest of the elements here, but you've got several elements and defects for this particular structure. One nice thing as well is once you're done, like if I was working in 215, which is the reinforced concrete abutment, and I'm done with all of my elements and defects and I don't want to see them anymore, there's a collapse button, and I'll just click that for most of these. What that does is collapses the defects and the protective systems, just so you don't have to see them anymore, and it kind of condenses your element screen. It's just a little easier to work with. Totally your preference on whether or not you do that during the course of your inspection entry. All right, on to the next one. We've got assessments. You've been taught what assessments are. Basically, it's like an element, but it has no defects and no protective systems. This screen actually works almost identical to the element screen. It's a little bit more simplistic in that all you can do is add and delete. So I've got a delete button that I can do there to get rid of the object markers, or I can come down and select any assessment that I wish to add there, add the quantity, and then put the notes in for the condition state. All right. Excuse me. The next tab is NBI Notes and Requirements. So similar to the old system, we have NBI file values that transfer over from the previous inspection, and if you have a change to that, you'd simply come over and select your new NBI value. Down below, we have 4 sets of notes. We have a structure-specific notes. You can see in this one for structure-specific, it says the structure was built in '74 and it's scheduled tentatively for a deck replacement in 2017. So that's just notes that are obviously specific to the structure and really don't have anything to do with the inspection. The inspection-specific notes are over here. We've got a couple things listed. It looks like there's some monitoring girder 1 on the north abutment, at the north abutment, and continue to monitor erosion behind the wings. And it looks like in 2009, the inspector said no change. In 2011, no change. So if we were doing this as well, we would also come in, let's say there's no change here in 2014, and I could do that as well. The third note is basically inspector site-specific safety considerations. There was a couple in here. I think they were just put in as an example. One was reinforcing steel in the water near the north abutment. So if you were out there doing a probe, it'd be nice to know that there's some rebar sticking out, so you don't cut yourself or get tangled up in that. Somebody also put in large wasp nest in ground near the tip of the northeast wing wall. So again, I think that'd be a pretty important thing to note if you stepped on it. And it's structure inspection procedure. I think this is, I mean, it can be used for any inspection, but I think this was really more intended on the fracture critical, the dive inspections, where you've got some specific inspection procedures that you need to follow, and you'd like people in the future to follow those same procedures. And then down below, and again, you guys have had this before, it's your traffic control, access equipment, things like that. So if you needed a snooper truck, I'd click actually I should have selected, let me delete that out. For the snooper, I would have actually selected access equipment and then noted that I need the snooper. And you probably want some more notes for number of hours you need the truck and contact information and things like that. Go ahead and hit save on that one. I'm going to save documents and images for a couple minutes from now. I want to hit the other tabs. One's maintenance. This is your maintenance recommendations. Again, you've seen these before. This isn't a box culvert, but I'm just adding just to show you how it works. So when you enter an action item, the action becomes identified and recommended. So that's the default status that you want to stay with. There's a priority button, high, medium, low, critical. For this, I'll just say it's a low priority. And then you'd want to enter a comment specific to the work that you'd like to see done. Save that. And you can add multiples. So if you wanted to add another one, it's the add button's right down here below. You select another. Oh, it's over here now. Say this is critical, and you'd add another note as follows. All right, the underwater tab. So if you remember, I selected underwater visual probe. So that gave us a tab. And basically what this tab is just a place where you could take notes for the probe inspection that you're doing. So we have the general site conditions, where you could talk about the site in terms of scour. You can also talk about the site in terms of embankment, erosion, and conditions. And really, these are notes that you probably should be kind of taking in your head anyway when you're looking at your NBI channel and waterway. Those are kind of some of the things you're going through. So it's a nice spot if you have some notes on that you'd add those notes for the structure. The system's also smart enough, and it's dynamic. It knows if you have cardinal and non-cardinal abutments, and it also knows how many piers you have. So this particular system has one pier, so it's going to show you a substructure unit just for one pier. If you had 5, there'd be 5 piers listed below. And basically what we're, kind of the minimum thing if you're doing your probe, say both abutments were dry. You could select the mode as dry, and you're pretty much done with looking at those two substructure units. Let's say the pier, though, you actually did wade. You could put your comments in here that local scour hole on upstream nodes, if I can spell, and then maybe a maximum depth of 2 feet, something like that, just so you have some comments related to the probe that you've done. Now, how this tab differs, so we did that for visual probe. Let's say instead of visual probe, we also chose UW dive, so we're doing a dive inspection as well. You come over to this tab, it looks, for the divers who know this, it looks very similar to what you've had before, where you've got your dive log information. You'll see that your abutments, you actually have quite a bit more information, the dive start time and finish time, channel material, So there's more information you'd have to enter as a diver than obviously what you'd have to enter if you're just doing a standard routine probe activity there. The final button, I really won't cover it that much. You guys have seen it before. You've been through the process. This is your SI&A. Again, it's copying a lot of information, quite frankly, than what we could do over in the structure information. There may be some work in the future in pulling the information from one tab to another. Right now, we just threw them both on there. You can change the information on either tab and be okay with that. But I really won't spend any time on that one. All right, so for the final tab here is the documents and images. So what we've done is tried to simplify this somewhat, and I hope you agree with this after you take a look at it. What you have is categories when you want to add documents. And you can see as I choose that drop-down, the categories for this current inspection that I'm doing are routine, underwater visual, probe, dive, re-rate for capacity, late reason, and other. These reasons are dynamic, so the late reasons appearing because we had a late inspection. If it wasn't there, there would be no late reason in that drop-down. Re-rate for capacity. If you remember on our structure information tab, we checked re-rate. So when you check that, you'll get a re-rate. So you could actually use that particular category to upload sketches or photos that are specific to the re-rating that you're looking at. Also remember we had the dive and the underwater visual probe. So as a dive inspector, if you have a report that's much more in-depth than what we're capturing here, and you typically upload that PDF, you'd select dive, add that PDF specific to that dive inspection, and on and on and on. So you can actually upload documents and pictures specific to the activity or inspection that you're working with. And we'll show you a couple examples here. So let's say for the routine inspection, I took a couple of pictures. I'll select routine, I click add, I'll choose files, and I'll browse to that window, and let's say I got 3 pictures here that are for my routine inspection. I'll click open. It says you got 3 files that we're looking to upload there, and I'm going to add those files. And again, the caveat, please limit your file size. We don't want 10 meg files being uploaded. Several hundred kilobytes is probably sufficient for most of this stuff, but check your camera settings and make sure. So we got those 3 that we uploaded. A lot simpler than the old system where you had to upload each one of those individually. Definitely you'll want to provide comments, in all of these comment boxes. I'm not going to do that right now for you. If you screwed up and this photo you didn't want to have in there, you can hit the delete button and it'll actually pop that photo right back out for you. I'm going to minimize that, and let's just add another couple. So let's say we've got re-rate for capacity, and I'm going to go ahead and add one for that as well. Choose the file. And let's say we put together some sketches and photos for that. So I've got a PDF that I'm going to add. When it comes back, again, you can put some documents for that PDF if you want to save some notes for the rating engineer, letting them know kind of what's detailed in there, things like that. You can totally do it. You've got your PDF document here. If you double-click it, it's asking me if I'm for sure that I want to open that. You can open that up. Hopefully. There you go. And you can see the inspector that did this had a bunch of photos. And also had a sketch attached. So that's, if you ask our rating engineers, that's awesome information that they can use if a load rating needs to be done. And you probably, let me select one other thing here before we close down here. I'm going to select UW profile and go back to the documents. So, okay, let me minimize this guy. So now we have the UW profile. So we've got a lot of people adding profiles to the system. So we'll go ahead and just show you that as well. I'm going to add that to the UW profile. And I've got an Excel sheet here that has our profile. So I'm going to add that and open that guy up for us so we can take a look at it. Big sheet. So here we have the data for this particular underwater profile. I think this is out of Southeast region. I'm not 100% sure on that. They also have their drawings for the East and for their West west fascias there. So, yeah, don't want to say anything. And with that, I mean, again, this inspection's a little crazy in that we selected a lot of things here. You know, your normal everyday inspection on a routine, you're probably selecting just the routine button. You may be uploading a picture or two, and it's not that different. So not many people do a routine, a dive, profile, probe, SIA, all those things at the same time. So when you're done with that, what you would do is you would hit your complete button, and that would complete the inspection. You can choose to let it auto-complete, but we really recommend that once you're done with your inspection, you complete it so that any scheduling reports or performance reports or anything of that nature gets that information immediately so that, so we have better access to the data that we've got. And if you wanted to view that inspection at any time, there's a view button here. You click that, it's going to upload or open the PDF for you where you can take a look at the inspection. And with that, I think I'm mostly done. I'm going to leave HSI open, but I'm mostly done with that portion of the presentation. So I'm going to unmute the phone and kind of open it up to questions either on the phone or through the chat pod. So give me just a second here, and I'll take care of that.